Hello, this is my assignment for the fourth week, and I just wanted to start out by talking about what mentor text I chose. First, I'll talk about my standards. So, my standards are write narratives to explain or develop real or imagined experiences or events using effective technique, descriptive details, and clear event sequences. Another one is establish a situation and introduce a narrator and or characters, organize an events and sequence that unfold naturally. So basically those standards are what I used to form my lesson, which is getting these students to develop their own personal narrative. So I was thinking that this would be geared towards maybe the end of year second graders. My mentor text is actually one of my favorite children's books called Stellaluna. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's a story about a little bat who gets separated from her family and has to, she finds herself with a family of birds, and she kind of learns the opposite way that she should be living. She sleeps during the night and is awake during the day, which is obviously not what bats do. And, oh, did I mention she was a bat? Stellaluna, if you didn't know, this is a story about a bat. And she tries to, instead of hanging upside down on a branch, she tries to be right side up, and the climax of the story is kind of when she gets separated from her bird family, and because the birds, they go home at night, and she wanted to keep flying, so that was kind of the moment where Stellaluna had to be brave and choose. And then the falling action of the story is when she is reunited with her mom, and her mom teaches her the ways that bats should be, and she's restored to what she should be. So I chose that as my mentor text because I actually just read this book to my kindergartners last week, and it just has a very clear sense of a story in the fact that it has a clear exposition, an immediate conflict, immediate rising action, a climax, falling action, and resolution, all the parts of the story. So my objectives for this lesson will be to really get the kids comfortable with using a story map. So starting with ideas and organizing those ideas into a narrative, into a proper formed narrative. I don't really touch on in this lesson because I believe it would be a 2, maybe 3 day lesson to really to complete the whole writing process. But we are just kind of cracking the surface and introducing the story map using the mentor text, Stellaluna. And I'm going to try and not press stop because uploading multiple videos has taken too long, my slow computer. So, I'm going to shift gears. Okay. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to break off into your literacy groups. You should be in about groups of 4. And in your groups, I have laid out 4 different multicolored cards. And we are going to play a game called Concentric Circles. And in this game, you'll have those 4 cards, and each card will have a prompt on them. For example, let me look at this one. This says, tell me about a time that you lost something important to you. So, taking turns, you will tell the story of what your prompt says. So I'll model it for you. So tell about a time that you lost something important to you. Okay. So there was this one time I was on my way to church. I was responsible for turning things on, getting there, being the first one there, setting up, getting ready for service, and I could not find my car keys. I felt like my world was crashing all around me. I started freaking out, looking at every single place. I could not find my car keys. Finally, I stopped and I started praying, and I said, Lord, please reveal where my car keys are. I need to get to church. I need to get everything set up so we can have an awesome service tonight. That people are depending on me. So I stopped for a minute. I started praying, and then I started getting, the Lord showed me some ideas of where my car keys might have been. And when you know it, I walked right to the spot that He showed me, which was underneath my kitchen sink. And I found them there. I don't know why they were there. I don't know why I said kitchen sink. It's late. Anyway, I found them there, and there they were. So I was able to get in my car and go. See? Okay. So that was my example of a story. So that's how I want you guys to talk in your literacy groups, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to tell your short stories to your friends. Okay, good. I hope you all enjoyed that game. Now I will reveal to you why I had you play. You little storytellers, you have the opportunity to practice telling short personal stories, which is also called a narrative. Narrative? Narrative. Now, we're going to walk through the process of making your own narrative. Now, this will be a narrative that you will have on paper that you'll be able to read and have others read, and it will tell a story that makes sense from start to finish. We'll use something called story map or story arch, and a character graphic organizer to get all these ideas, all these personal experiences, or all these creative ideas onto something organized. So I want you all to go back to your seat, and I am going to read the story called Stellaluna. Now, many of you have probably read this story, maybe in the younger grades, but it's a really good story, and I just want you to pay attention to a couple of things. So go ahead and get out your writing journal. I want you to take notes, and I'm going to write them on the board. So the first thing we're going to talk about is an exposition. I kind of don't want... Okay. We're going to talk about an exposition. Write this down. An exposition is a background information about the protagonist in normal life. Okay, so I would have gone through all those things but for sake of time. So they'll be taking notes on exposition, conflict, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. That'll be kind of my lecture type portion of the lesson, but instead of explaining all of those things, I have those written out in my lesson plans. Anyway. Okay, alright. Let's go ahead and put away your writing journals, get comfortable. I'm going to read to you the story Stellaluna, and I want you to keep your eye out for those 6 things that we took notes on. Blah, 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 blah. Read the story. Okay, I just handed out to you something called a story arch, and we are going to work together to fill this out for the story of Stellaluna. Okay, I have my cup full of popsicle sticks with all of your names on it, so I'm going to pick a stick. Can anyone tell me what the exposition or the beginning of the story was like in Stellaluna? Oh, yes, that was it. So I'll go over each part, and we'll all fill out the story map. I attached an example of a story arch or story map at the bottom of my lesson plan for you to see. We'll go through all 6 of those pieces and all fill that outfill that all out together. Okay. So now that we filled out the story map, we're going to move on to step 1 of our creating a narrative. And I'm going to flip through the pages of this book, and I want you to look only at the pictures. Look at Stellaluna. We talked about how she is the main character of this story. I want you to look at her facial expressions, the way the artist showed her movement on her body language. And we're going to brainstorm some ideas on our little graphic organizer. We're going to have a graphic organizer. Our web that we've done before. Okay? It's backwards. Awesome. We are going to brainstorm some of her character traits and characteristics based off of what we read. So some of the possible answers could be, maybe she looked young, she looked confused at the beginning, she turned in brave, she had a brave face on, and we saw that she was risk-taking by jumping off and flying. So those are possible things. I'm also going to hand out to you a graphic organizer that looks like this. Hold it up. It's attached at the bottom of my lesson plan. We are going to use this graphic organizer to create your very own character. I want you to create at least 1 or 2 characters. But what you're going to be identifying, you're going to create a character. And what does your character do to show her personality? What does your character look like on the outside? What is her name? What are their traits? How does your character change? Or what lessons would your character learn? What does your character say to show her personality? So I really want you to develop, just how we talked about Stella Luna, I want you to develop your own character. I'm going to give you about 20 or 30 minutes to do this, because after you're done filling out the graphic organizer, I want you to illustrate your character on the back. I want you to draw and color, and then we can begin to brainstorm ideas of what your character is going to do, and that'll be the beginning of our narrative, the beginning of our story. Now that we've developed our characters and we have illustrated and some ideas, I'm going to give you another one of those story maps. We've now seen these 3 different times. You're going to create the very foundation of your narrative. You're going to be able to tell me about the beginning of the story, how your character might get into trouble, the rising action, right? The climax, maybe the grand battle that your character has, and then maybe the falling action and the resolution at the end. So we've gone over that story arch. So now it's time for you to look at my examples that we've put and in the beginning of this lesson, and you are going to just fill in very basic information about your character and what they do throughout your narrative. Okay, great job. For the very last few things, I want you to get together with your partner. We're going to be doing our Think, Pair, Share. With your partner, you are going to exchange your story map with them. Don't show them your character page yet. And you're going to read your partner's paper. Then at the very end, you're going to have a discussion about what you think their story is going to be about based on the information they provided in their story map. Okay. Now for the closure activity. These kiddos have been sitting and writing and listening for a while, so I want to get them up, but I still want them to have this story arch, pieces of a narrative in their minds, because that's what the goal of the lesson was, to be able to get them to form their story arch and the pieces of their story. So we are going to do a brain break called Dance Dance Story. This is where the students will do basic moves when a story is read. So I have a very basic story. It's a story that just has basic characters. They go to the store, they find a dog, basic story like that. Really easy to be able to pick out like the characters, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, all those type of things. So when a character is introduced, the students will bow or curtsy to each other as like an introduction. When they notice the rising action, since we've been able to identify those things, they're going to jump up and down. For the climax of the story, when that big action part happens, they're going to do 5 jumping jacks, and when the falling action starts, they're going to do 5 sun salutations, which is just the big yoga, breathe and touch your toes. And I will direct these. I will give them directions as I read the story and help model that for them. But that is my lesson. I feel like I talked a lot. Please refer to my lesson plan for any clarifications. I did elaborate much more in the plans. Thank you.